The biopic Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan, omits the bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, prompting discussion on whether the film ought to have treated this important event with more care. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945 resulted in the deaths of between 150,000 and 200,000 civilians. The American military destroyed the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It has been hotly contested for decades since these attacks whether they qualify as crimes against humanity or acts of war. The development of the atomic bombs used in the bombings of both cities was largely overseen by J. Robert Oppenheimer, the subject of Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. While Oppenheimer has received positive reviews, several critics have objected to the film's omission of a clear depiction of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. It makes sense that some viewers were astonished to see no images of the destruction that Oppenheimer's invention inflicted, given that Oppenheimer himself played a key role in the development of the weapon and ultimately earned the title of father of the atomic bomb. However, Nolan pointed out that the sole purpose of his biography was to portray Oppenheimer's inner existence. The explosions could not be shown because Oppenheimer was unable to comprehend the heinous immensity of instantly murdering an entire civilian community. Since the release of Oppenheimer, the argument over the choice to omit the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki has divided detractors online. Some reviewers suggested that the movie's plot should have given voice to the Japanese people who were harmed by Oppenheimer's invention. Others countered that using simply the Hiroshima and Nagasaki blasts to represent Japanese characters would have been a crass exploitation of their terrible fate. The American Prometheus adaptation by Oppenheimer explores the physicist's professional and personal lives, as well as the U.S. military decision-makers who authorized the bombing. However, some people thought this account of the event felt unfinished. Over the years, films have portrayed the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, albeit few have actually reconstructed the actual events. Vicodin, a 1978 short film by Renzo Kinoshita, and Hiroshima, a 1953 feature film by Hideo Sekiguchi, both show the effects of the bombing on the civilian population of the city. Oppenheimer provided a unique chance for a blockbuster to give this notorious crime its fair share of screen time thanks to a huge budget and an accomplished director. Nolan's work on Dunkirk showed his ability to realistically portray the cruelty of battle, but this does not necessarily imply that he could do the same for the particular inhumanity of a nuclear explosion. In a brief interview, Nolan stated why he decided against showing the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. Doing so would have taken the narrative out of Oppenheimer's perspective. We know so much more than he did at the time, according to Nolan. Like the rest of the world, he heard about the bombings on the radio. Oppenheimer only ethically objects to what transpired after the fact because the biopic centers on its subject. In order for viewers to accept the notion that Oppenheimer did not foresee the atomic bomb's impact on civilians, it is necessary to consider the scientist's early detachment from the horrifying potential of the weapon. There was a risk that the film would show numerous innocent Japanese civilians being brutally murdered without first delving into the lives, dreams, and unique human existences that Oppenheimer's invention cut short in a matter of seconds. It is simple to understand why Oppenheimer has drawn criticism. After all, Nolan's biopic is about the man whose invention left an equally permanent stain on the international heritage of the United States and an irrevocable mark on the history of Japan. Oppenheimer would have been rightfully criticized for not examining the event adequately if Nolan's atomic bomb portrayals had included Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Therefore, the crucial query is whether Nolan might triumph in either scenario. The movie Oppenheimer might be charged with history revision if it didn't show the Hiroshima and Nagasaki explosions. However, if Oppenheimer had included footage of the bombings, the film would have come under fire for clumsily turning one of the worst tragedies in recorded history into a big-budget set piece. Given how challenging it is to simultaneously do justice to the personal stories of 200,000 people, depicting the bombs runs the risk of appearing cheap and exploitative. This risk always existed while making a movie about the man who created the atomic bomb, a weapon used to obliterate a civilian population. Oppenheimer's portrayal of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki could only have been successful if the film gave the bomb's victims as much attention and screen time as it did to the bomb's inventor.